Flashy girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Oh, Mr. Sheffield, the podcast about The Nanny, which is a TV series from the 90s, starring Fran Drescher. I am Sean Pasquale here with
Toria Sheffield.
That's right. And today, folks, we are discussing Season 3, Episode 8, The Party's Over, written by Karen Lucas and directed by Dorothy Lyman again. This is the one in which Mr. Sheffield goes out of town and Fran throws a party in his house, and then hijinks ensue. Mm-hmm. So this was pretty good. It had some beats that I really liked.
Oh yeah.
Like a lot. It felt like, I don't know, it felt very short to me. Like not a lot happens.
Well, it's because there is this, it's sort of a setup to this admittedly, very funny courtroom scene, but that kind of comes out of nowhere, with a cameo that kind of comes out of nowhere. And I loved it, but I was like, oh, okay, this seems kind of like the meat of the episode, but I didn't see it coming. But again, I really had fun with this episode. I think that, not every episode can be like the most perfect, most amazing 10 out of 10. This was very funny to me, very enjoyable, and I felt like it went down like candy. I liked it a lot. Yeah. And I think, as I say all the time, our bar is really high because there are certain episodes that just like they knock it out of the park in terms of being hilarious, but having these like really resonant emotional beats. Mm-hmm. And so now I feel like when an episode is just really funny and enjoyable, which is all a 30 minutes, like a 22-minute sitcom, like often is, we're kind of like, it's fine. It's
just okay. Yeah, that's true. We're very hard on these episodes.
We are. But so this episode starts with Mr. Sheffield and Cece, or establishing that Mr. Sheffield and Cece are going to Boston for a weekend business trip. And Cece, as usual, is angling to seduce Mr. Sheffield. And she's so excited because she thinks this might be her opportunity. And she exits the scene, and Niles immediately sabotages the plans for her by convincing Mr. Sheffield that this would be a great weekend to take the children along, which is so mean.
Such a dick move.
I have a note about this. Do you think that Niles is now subconsciously sabotaging Cece and Mr. Sheffield because he has feelings for Cece?
Oh, that is very interesting. I honestly didn't consider that, but yeah, maybe. I mean, I guess the real question is, do you think that the writers were that forward thinking?
Okay. I think that probably at this stage, it's just, we can take it at face value, but I like to, add an extra little layer on there, which is, for my own viewing pleasure, which is maybe, he is convincing himself it's because he loves to revel in her misery, but actually he's taking solace in the fact that like nothing's going to happen.
Nothing's going to happen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's my own little fan.
I like that. Mm-hmm. I'm not against, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility.
And then meanwhile, we have Fran and Val in the kitchen. They are gorging themselves on ice cream and lamenting their single statuses. And there's this very funny line where Val's like, "Oh, Fran,
they're eating a tub of ice cream directly from the tub. And every once in a while, a huge tub. And then at one point in the scene, Fran goes to the fridge, pulls out whipped cream, and sprays it directly into the tub.
And just like pours M&Ms in. I will freely admit this episode made me break my whole anti-inflammatory diet plan because I wanted ice cream so badly after I watched this that I just ate like half a thing of ice cream. Nice. And I was also like, it seems to me like these actresses are really going for it, like really eating.
Yeah, they were eating.
Yeah, so I'm like, do they just not?
Although I did note that Val was eating a little bit more than Fran. Just a little bit more. Just like a couple bites more.
Yeah. Well, I was
she really dug in there when Fran put the whipped cream on it.
God. Well, I was wondering, like, maybe in rehearsals you don't eat it and you save it all up because, when you're on a hit TV show, there's a lot of pressure to look a certain way. And, what do you do when you got to be eating all this ice cream? Seems like it would blow an entire day of your
I
body.
know an actor who had to go film something and wherein he had to eat macaroni and cheese, and he requested a bucket and took a bite and spit it into the bucket every single take.
So freaking nasty. And I think that's super,
did not
super
swallow.
normal.
It's super normal. Yeah. It's very, very common. I just thought it was really funny.
Yeah. You got to tell me who that is off camera, off mic. But so I also noted, I also noted that, Fran was wearing these jeans that I thought were so cool, and they would be so trendy right now. They were sky blue with clouds.
I noticed those too. The cloud jeans.
Cool.
I never noticed clothing, and I was like, "Oh, those cloud jeans are neat." I wonder if I have bad taste in fashion or if they're really cool looking.
No, I mean they were high waisted. I think honestly, like if they were made today, like they would be very, very stylish. I actually might literally look up and see if there's anything like that. They were so cool.
There's also a really solid, before we move too far away from it, there's a really solid joke where, you know what? I'll wait till the end. I'll wait till favorite lines.
Can I just say, is it the gross Brighton joke?
No, it's Niles. It's a Niles joke. It's a Niles wordplay joke. That's very funny.
Okay. Well, I'll say this.
There's also a gross
I was like, ew. While they're eating their ice cream and so literally Val's like, oh, Fran, I just think I'm never going to fulfill my dream of getting to buy double burial plots. And Fran's like, she's like, that's your dream, Val? That's my dream too, which further solidifies our, Jewish
Jews
people.
love burial plots thing. Yes.
Yeah. But then Fran's like, oh, is it too much to ask? Like, I just want a nice looking guy who's got some money. At which point Brighton walks in. Brighton who's maybe about 13 now.
This is so weird.
I just hated it so much. They both pause. They look him up and down and he's like, what? And Fran's like, She's like, have you ever seen Harold and Maude? And then she's like, forget it. Once you've seen a guy in his, superhero PJs, it's all, it's all off from there, whatever she says. But I was like, ew, Fran, you're like his mother figure.
Yeah.
I hated it.
I hated it too. It felt like they wanted to just make that Harold and Maude joke and like, they didn't like it just because it was funny to them, but it's like, I don't know. Why would Fran ever think that? I don't think Fran's ever sexualized this little boy.
Ew. Or if you're going to do it, at least have Val do it and then Fran be like, ugh, gross. No. And this
you could, because you still could have done the PJs line, because Fran could have been like, well, trust me, I've seen him in his Batman PJs. It's, or something. I don't know. But like, yeah, it was really weird. It was really weird. Gross.
I did not like it. But so this is when they hatch a plan to throw a singles party. And they say they're going to do it in the back of Lenny's Clam Bar. And they're like, we'll charge $10 or $20 a cover charge. And, it'll be our little way to maybe meet some single guys. Mm-hmm. And then we establish another thing that's happening this episode, which is Maggie really doesn't want to go to Boston with her brother and sister and her dad that weekend because she has a 9 Inch Nails concert. And if Mr. Sheffield at first is like, no, like you're too young to stay home alone. You can't. And Fran helps convince him that, at 16, she's actually old enough to do that. And I also was like, but wait, isn't Fran there and Niles? Like, is she really going to be alone?
That's what I thought too. I was like, it's so weird how like they're classifying this as alone when like Fran and Niles are going to be there. Like her nanny is there.
Her nanny both of them live in the house. And I was like, well, you know what? Maybe I wish there had just been like one little line that would have established like Fran has the weekend off and, maybe she's not expected to be home.
Yeah. And maybe Niles goes like, that's not my job or something, like.
Yeah, it was a little bit where you're like, okay, I mean, this kid actually is basically like two per parents there. But so Mr. Sheffield and Cece, Fran helps convince Mr. Sheffield that it'll be okay and that she's mature enough to stay home. So Mr. Sheffield, Cece, and the two youngest kids leave for the weekend. And then that's when Val comes running in. She goes, Fran, you're not going to believe this. Lenny's clam bar burned down. And Fran goes, how?
Oh.
Val goes, fire. It was so funny. That was so stupid. It's so funny. And then they're basically like, they start to cry. They like literally like collapse into each other's arms and they're like, we're going to be single for life. And this is when Maggie is like, hey, Fran, Dad said I can't have any parties at the mansion this weekend, but he didn't say anything about you. So it's decided that this single party is going to happen at the house, not at a bar. We actually, I'll save it till the end because I have a funny line involving all this. But so we then cut to the party at the mansion, and it's this like funny little montage of, Fran keeps dancing with different guys and they all end up being duds for various reasons. And every time she goes, have you met my friend Val? And like that. And then she's finally dancing with a seemingly nice, normal, handsome guy. But it turns out he's a police officer and she's under arrest for operating a business without a license. I don't know how he caught wind of this. I don't know how the
whole thing felt very forced, right? Where you're like, okay, I guess. Also, what is the business that she charged for like a house party? I don't even think that's counts.
I guess it would basically be like, this is like if you're charging a cover fee, like you're kind of like a club or a bar of some kind and you're selling alcohol without a liquor license. So it was kind of you're operating a business without any of the official.
Right.
I guess because she is making a profit off it. It's not just a house party.
I guess.
It's like there's a book about this couple here in Los Angeles. It's like it's an actual true story. They were really, really amazing cooks, and they basically opened a restaurant like just out of their apartment. And whenever the who's the food and drug people,
the FDA?
Whenever the health department, they caught wind of this, and whenever they would get like a shakeup or whatever from the health department, they would just say that all of these people in their apartment were their friends and they were just having a big party. And nobody would admit that they were paying for the food because that was the difference between just having a party and owning a business.
Right.
So I guess it was like that. But so Fran literally gets arrested. And the next morning she shows up. The place is totally trashed because there was a big party there and, there was nobody supervising it. And she, Niles, and Maggie start cleaning up because Maggie had clearly spent the night at a friend's house that night. So she gets back just around the time when.
And she's like, whoa.
Yeah. She was like, I can't believe you trashed the house while I was gone. And then she was like, I miss everything.
Yeah.
But so she, Niles, and Fran start trying to clean up, and Fran's literally like, oh God, thank God your father's not getting home for a few hours. Like he'd be furious if he saw this. He then comes down the stairs looking furious. And he's like, Gracie got sick, so we came home early. And we've also, I forgot to mention, there was a running gag that Gracie always pukes on planes. And so it's extra insult to injury with Cece where Cece is going to have to sit next to her. And so he literally is like, so we came home.
And Niles packs her a lunch and it's egg salad.
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. It was so disgusting. And Mr. Shumfield's literally like, when he comes down the stairs, he's like, so we came home early. And then he's like, Niles, please get Miss Babcock's blazer dry clean and answer him a blazer, which clearly got puked on. But so then you think Fran's about to be in a huge amount
of trouble. Which he then throws into the fireplace.
Yes, he throws into the fireplace. But so, you think Fran's about to get in a lot of trouble. But Mr. Sheffield is like, I'm so disappointed in you, Maggie. And it's very clear that he's assuming that she threw a house party while Fran and Niles were out. And Fran is instantly like, oh, no. Like, Mr. Sheffield, no, it was me. And he's like, oh, don't try to cover for her, Miss Fine. She needs to accept her punishment. And then she's like, no, really it was. And he has this line where he's like, I think even the woman who put the honk if you're a hunk bumper sticker on my limo isn't stupid enough to throw a party while I'm gone. And he's like, because, if you genuinely did that, I'd have to fire you. At which point Maggie kind of stands up and she's like, no, Dad, like it was me, because she doesn't want Fran to get fired. And I literally wrote, oh, Maggie, we've been so hard on you lately. Yeah. To the point where I genuinely felt guilty, as if she was a real person I knew.
Yeah. I was like, oh, she's such like a sweetheart. Like it's such a sweet and selfless act to be like, I threw this giant party like that she wasn't even there for. Yeah, I thought it was really sweet. Yeah,
it's so funny. My literal thing is, she's actually really sweet. Yeah. I was literally like, let's give her some cred. And so Mr. Sheffield basically grounds her indefinitely and sends her up to her room, which also means she's going to miss the big concert, which was the whole reason she didn't go to Boston in the first place.
Right.
And in the next scene, though, Fran, also being a very good person, like literally could not let this happen. So she is in Mr. Sheffield's office telling him the whole truth. And he's obviously very angry. And she's basically like, oh, and he's basically like, I'm going to really have to think about what I do here. Like it's serious. Like he's like, I might actually have to fire you. And this has one of my favorite lines in the whole episode, which I will just share here because it also leads us to the next scene, where Fran's like, okay. She's like, but before you fire me, just remember that I'm a fantastic nanny and I'm a very good influence on the children. And then she's like, I'm late for my arraignment. If a hooker named Sparkles calls, tell her I'm in court. And that's because she had made reference to the fact that she had made friends with a hooker named Sparkles when she was in jail the night before. But so she goes running out for her court date. Like, so that's the other thing that happens in this episode, where it feels like a lot was leading up to have this big comedic scene. But also felt a little random, but whatever. It was still really, really funny, at least to me.
I like it.
Yeah. And so Fran runs out and Mr. Sheffield literally looks at Niles and he's like, I don't know what to do here. Like, the reality is Maggie is at a very impressionable age and she really needs to be around someone who's going to like help her build character.
Yeah. And make good choices.
Yeah. And make good choices. But then Niles like very, very sagely goes, yes, you're right, sir. And what teenage girl in her right mind would give up the concert of her life to save a friend? Basically being like, don't you see that was a tremendous act of character? And clearly Fran is rubbing off on her in a good way. And he also makes reference to like the ways that the other children have really flourished. He was like, and he's like, you're right. Like Miss Fine's not doing a lot. I mean, all that's happened is Gracie's therapist is no longer on speed dial and, all these other things.
Right. All the reasons why, like, everyone has changed.
For the better.
Interrompemos esse podcast para perguntar: quem você quer ser?
Designer, engenheira, pedagoga,
administrador.
Quer saber? O Senac EAD é nota máxima no MEC. Tem cursos de diversas áreas, com conteúdo elaborado por especialistas do mercado e professores mestres e doutores. Ainda tem o Senac Carreiras, conectando estudantes a vagas de emprego em todo o país. Saiba mais em ead.senac.br/graduação.
Chegou a melhor parte do podcast. É hora de provar a melhor Coca-Cola. A Coca-Cola sem açúcar. O sabor irresistível da Coca-Cola, sem açúcar e igualmente refrescante. Coca-Cola sem açúcar. A melhor escolha.
We then cut to Fran in court at her arraignment with Val. And we set up that Fran has an uncle, Lenny, who's a lawyer who will represent. No, Lenny.
No, Manny. Manny.
Really?
Uncle Manny. Yeah.
I'm Googling that. The nanny.
I mean, it's in the credits.
Is it?
Yeah, it's Manny.
Why did I think it was Lenny?
I don't know.
Let me see here. I got. You're right. It's Uncle Manny.
Yeah, Uncle Manny. Because of Uncle Milty.
Oh, that's true. So she has an Uncle Manny, a great Uncle Manny who's going to be representing her. And that's when this hilarious scene ensues where he comes in and it's Milton Berle, who iconic American comedy actor. Literally like 80 years in the industry kind of thing. Very, very famous. And he's very old at this point, at 1995, but he is crushing it. And so is the judge. There's an old man playing the judge. And these two are hilarious. Like, Uncle Manny comes in and he's literally like, he hears the charges against Fran. He goes, "Oh, you're going to need a lawyer." And she's like, "You're my lawyer." And then at another point, he literally falls asleep. And Fran goes, "I'm sorry, Your Honor. I think the defense is resting." It was a very kind of like vaudevillian, like set him up, knock him down scene with these very, very funny men. And it's very clear that, Uncle Manny is doing a very bad job of representing her. And Fran is not going to get out of this. At which point, Mr. Sheffield comes into the court and he shows up to support her and act as this character reference, essentially. And he's like, "Your Honor, I am her employer. And I can honestly tell you, like, I have never known this woman to knowingly break the law. Like, she's a very good person." And so instead of like any jail time or anything like that, she's just charged, or actually he's charged with a $500 fine because the party happened in his home. And then, as they're leaving the courtroom.
And he's rich as fuck, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah. But he does tell her it's coming out of her salary, which firmly establishes that he's not going to fire her. And that's really the end of the episode. Like, not only does she get to keep her job, but he shows up for her and he shows up to say this person has character, this person has integrity. And it was, a sweet, I think, way to resolve this situation.
Yeah. I mean, my only real issue is that we've sort of been here before, like Mr. Sheffield coming to her character rescue, you know what I mean? And being like, she's a good person and she's good to my kids. We've seen that before. We've gotten that beat in other episodes. But, I wouldn't have traded in the Milton Berle cameo because I thought that scene was so rapid fire and great and funny.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
There was so many funny lines that I was like, you know what? If I take note of everything that makes me laugh, we're just going to spend 40 minutes talking about this one scene. But, he comes into the courtroom literally going, I object. And they're like, "What do you object to?" And he goes, "To those electronic doors on the bathroom." And the judge is like, "That's the elevator." And then he goes, "Use the stairs." It was so goofy and funny. But that was the episode. And there was a little button on this episode, which we haven't seen in a while, but instead of it just coming the way they normally do, you heard Fran Drescher's voice goes, "Stick around, I have a surprise," which has never happened before. So I wonder if they were finding that people weren't sticking around long enough to know that there was buttons, or maybe because there hasn't been one in so long, they were thinking that people wouldn't know to stick around for it. But It was Val and Milton Berle. It was a very funny little beat where he's like, "That dress looks fantastic." And she's like, "Thank you." And he goes, "Can I try it on?" And that's it. That's the app. I think I did a good job of not just saying all my favorite lines while we described the episode, because I have a bunch coming up.
So do I. Yeah. Because this whole episode was like lines. It was like funny lines and like funny deliveries. Mm-hmm. Let's get into segments. And now segments.
So segments.
Yeah, no, I think we should move on to segments.
We can move on to our segments.
And now, segments.
With Sean and Toria. When Fran and Maggie are going over the RSVPs to the singles party, Maggie goes, "Oh, this guy seems perfect for you, Fran." And she goes, "Oh, no, he says he's looking for a Catholic girl." And then Fran goes, "Great, he's Jewish." Which is like, I don't know.
True.
I don't know if this like joke or knowledge extends outside of the Jewish community, but it's very common for Jewish boys to like those Catholic girls. It's, opposite.
It is very common.
Yeah. It's, Schick says it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked the honk if you're a hunk bumper sticker line because clearly Fran I think I mentioned that earlier, right? Oh yeah. Because the idea that Fran would have literally put a hunk if you're a hunk bumper sticker on a limo.
On the limo.
And I love the Sparkles hooker line, but I think my favorite line was a Val moment. She's so stupid. Fran is telling Val about her uncle and
pro bono.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Fran goes, and he's strictly pro bono. And Val goes, really? Well, I'm glad he's not representing me because I'm pro Cher.
Which only works if you know that Cher was once married to a guy named Sonny Bono.
I mean, I think the whole world knows. It's just younger people might not know now. But
yeah, that's what I meant. But yeah, at the time, everyone knew Cher and Sonny.
Of course, Sonny and Cher. What were your favorites?
I really liked. Well, there was a lot in the courtroom. I really liked. The judge goes, "Is your attorney present?" And she goes, "My attorney present. You know what? She's like, I'm not going to get him anything. Let's see how he does first." And then the judge looks at the bailiff and he goes, "Is this a competency hearing?" Which I really like that line and the delivery.
And the thing is, it was well done because it wasn't "is your attorney present?" It was, "Do you have your attorney present?"
Oh, right. That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So good.
And then it wasn't a line, but I really liked the last guy that Fran is dancing with. She goes, "I love your hair." And he goes, "It's made out of eggplant," which is weird. And then she's like, "Oh," and she like goes to like touch it and it gets on her hand and then she rubs it on his lip and he looks like Hitler.
Yes. No, he says it's all sprayed on. I don't think he says it's made out of eggplant. I don't know where you got.
He said it was made out of eggplant.
No, he says his hair is all, maybe he did, but basically he says his hair was all sprayed on, meaning that like he's balding and most of the hair on his head was actually paint.
Yeah.
And yes, when she does accidentally touch it, she then touches his lip and he looks just like Hitler. And she still goes, "Have you met my friend Val?"
Yep. I also liked, what was the other one? Oh, it was the semantics line where he goes, Mr. Sheffield goes, "I specifically said no parties." And she's like, "Well, you told Maggie no parties." And he goes, "Don't start with the semantics." And she goes, "Oh, now you're going to fire me because you're anti-semantic?"
Yes.
I was like, as soon as he said semantics, I was like, oh, I hope she makes an anti-Semitic joke.
Right?
Anti-semantic. So good. It was great. And then Milton Berle, first line, he enters, he goes, "I object." And the judge goes, "What do you object to?" And he goes, "The electric doors in the men's room." And the guy goes, "That's an elevator." And there's a beat. And then he goes, "Ugh, take the stairs." Yeah. He skied in the elevator. It's so good.
He just crushed that entire scene. It was so good.
And then, of course, at one point, there's a great, if the glove doesn't fit, there's another OJ. So many OJ. Man, people went hard on OJ in the 90s, huh? That was like but yeah, he goes, Milton Berle goes, "Judge, please look, the skirt is so snug. And, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit." And the judge looks at him like he's insane.
Yeah. Well, there's also a line where, when the judge says she might have to go to jail, she goes, "Will I get conjugal visits in prison?" And then he's like, "Yes." And she goes, "Put me down for 2 years." It was great. Looking back, that
jail's fun.
No, that scene was a big home run.
Yeah. The guy that played the judge is like, you'd never know him by his name, but he's like one of those like character actor guys that's in like, he's been in every movie that's come out basically since like 1978. Like he's had like he's a judge, he's a detective, he plays judges a lot, so like I'm sure you've seen him on stuff and that's why you were like, oh, I know that guy kind of.
Absolutely. Yeah. He actually has a very comforting presence because I think we've seen him as these stately older men so many times.
Yes, exactly.
And then for
he was Paulie the pawnbroker on an earlier episode of The Nanny, and he comes back later and plays her Uncle Ray.
Oh, fantastic.
So I'm glad you like him because he's going to show up a lot more. Get ready.
Sitcoms.
All right. So Yiddish?
Yeah, Yiddish. Okay. So there was two that I clocked.
Yeah.
Mensch, which is a person of integrity and honor. Mm-hmm. And then Mr. Sheffield uses the term schmear because when he comes to court and says that he's never known Fran to knowingly break the law, he goes, well, except for trying to get free cable. But I mean, who doesn't smear the cable guy? Which means to flatter or like to grease or to oil someone up, which is very funny. And then
schmear.
I
mean, we've talked about this before, but it's the best when he uses like when any of the family uses her Yiddish. Yeah.
For sure.
It's always funny to me.
And okay, so for nanny trivia, so we've had some really great Val episodes recently. So I thought let's talk a little bit about Rachel Chagall, who plays Val.
Yeah.
So she was born in New York City as Rachel Levin. So even though she plays the Italian Val Torriello, she's actually Jewish. But she took the name Chagall because there was already an actress named Rachel Levin, and Marc Chagall, the extremely famous artist, Chagall, was apparently her grandmother's first cousin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he's, a very famous person in the art world.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
Right. Though I will say, like, your grandmother's first cousin, doesn't that sound more like family lore than
it does, right?
It's like maybe his last name happened to be Chagall, but it wasn't Marc Chagall or something like that. Her husband.
I hope that's what it was.
Right?
Yeah.
Her husband, Greg Leonard, was a stage manager on The Nanny. And there's actually not a ton of information about her life online, but I read Fran Drescher's book, Cancer Schmancer, and Fran mentions her a number of times as one of her best and dearest friends, like the kind of person who will drive you to doctor's appointments, will be the person
that's so sweet.
Yeah, like the kind of person who's waiting for you after surgery, like a really it seems like they're very there's real love between these two people. Like they really are dear to each other in real life, not just in The Nanny, which I thought was great. And I thought that this was interesting. So Rachel Chagall's most notable role outside The Nanny was a dramatic performance in a very critically acclaimed 1987 movie called Gabby, A True Story, in which she played real-life disability activist Gabriella Brimmer, who was a Mexican Jewish woman born with cerebral palsy. She won a golden – actually, maybe she was only nominated. I should check that. But she was at least nominated for a Golden Globe for the role. And her co-star, Norma Alejandro, was nominated for an Oscar. So this was a big deal movie that she was in. And she did –
That's huge.
Yeah. So she's, clearly very talented. But mostly worked with Fran on The Nanny.
Did she do any of Fran's other shows?
I noticed that she was in an episode of What I Like About You, which was a Peter Mark Jacobson show.
Mm-hmm.
I should check. I only skimmed it, so maybe she wasn't happily divorced. But, she definitely was kind of in the mix with their creative stuff later.
That's so cute. I like that.
Yeah, it was great.
And then the friend or the CC.
Well, I said I would never throw a party I wasn't supposed to. So I'm definitely not the Fran.
Yeah.
You would.
I'm trying to think if I have. I don't think I would. I was pretty good. Like when my parents left town, I was like, I didn't want to screw anything up. I hated getting in trouble as a kid was the thing.
But why? But I guess because you didn't want to disappoint your parents, but you didn't care about school authority. Yeah.
No, they were not. I didn't give it. Yeah, exactly. I didn't care at all about school authority, but I definitely didn't want to disappoint my parents.
Well, in general, though, I think that means you're more able to stick it to the man than I.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I got no problem with the man. I just, don't mess with my mom.
That should be on every prisoner's arm.
No problem with the man, but don't fuck with my mom.
Yeah, seriously. So I don't know. So maybe you're not the Fran. For some reason, I totally thought you'd have some story about like, getting into your parents' liquor cabinet or something.
No, I didn't really do that. I don't know. First of all, my parents very rarely went anywhere or did anything. So I didn't have a lot of those opportunities. And the few times they did, it was such like a fight to get them to leave me alone that I was like, I can't screw this. I can't then immediately turn around and be a dick.
Yeah.
They barely wanted to leave me alone as it was.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. So, and it's also endearing that you would, your parents' good faith would, means something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was never left alone. I feel like it was just, I couldn't even be left alone for 10 minutes in the house.
Oh God. That explains so much about you now.
Oh my God.
But that's a conversation for another podcast. If you like the show and you're having a good time with us, please don't forget to go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, rate and review the show. That helps other people find it. And if you want to tell us about what parties you threw when your parents were out of the house, find us on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram at Oh Mr. Chef Pod. But really, Instagram is where it all pops off. Right, Toria?
Oh, yeah. That's our number one hub for sure.
That's our hub. That's a big hub for us. And on that note, I will say goodbye, Toria.
Goodbye, Sean. Never ever see you again. Goodbye, everyone.
The witch's curse.
The Flushing girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.